All right, everybody. Welcome to the seminar series. Today's speaker is Jenifer Lopes. Lopes. She's one of our newest research fellows. She just joined us this last month from the University of Sao Paulo, where she had been working on a postdoctoral project on the phylogenetics, biogeography, and systematics of the tribe Ananaoese. I cannot say that. Ananaoese. It's like aluminum. Her research here at the HUH will focus on Valosia, and today she'll be telling us about the Brazilian Flora and the program REFLORA.
Okay,
welcome.
Thank you for everybody for coming. Before I start my talk, I would just introduce myself a little bit. Yeah, I'm from São Paulo. São Paulo is one of the largest cities in South America. Yeah, it's in the coast, close to the coast of in Brazil, and it has like 12 million inhabitants. It's like 700 meters above sea levels. I use meter system, sorry. I was born in a city close to São Paulo in the coast, where there is a famous soccer team there, where Neymar and Pelé start their careers. The city that I was born is Santos. Yeah, it's just 1 hour from the capital, São Paulo. Yeah, then I studied at the University of São Paulo. It's also one of the biggest universities in South America. It has like some numbers here just to you to know. And here is the main campus that is in the capital. It's like a city. You have to go there by bus. Yeah, and then I start my studies in 2005. I did a bachelor in biological science, and by this time I was supervised by Professor Renato de Melo Silva. And I did my master in botany and my PhD also in botany. And here is like a timeline. When I started studying botany when I was an undergraduate student, and this is one of my first field work in somewhere in Brazil with my supervisor. Here is the committee of my PhD defense. Here's my supervisor and the other people in the committee, and here is me presenting my PhD that I finished in 2016. Then in 2019, I started my postdoc. Between 2016 and 2019, I was lecturing in a small college in Brazil. And I started my postdoc with the same supervisor, Renato, but unfortunately, he passed away in 2020. And yeah, after telling about that, I was associated with the SPF herbarium, is like a small collection. And yeah, after he passed away, he left me with one student that is also called Renato. And now and he was studying Valosia, yeah, the undergraduate student. And he decided to continue studying Valosia. And now this is why I'm studying Valosia, because I was mainly studying Ananaoese. Yeah. Then I continue doing the research that my supervisor was doing. And here some pictures of Valosia. It's a plant. It's a monocotyledon. It occurs mainly in the Campus rupestris. That is habitats that occur in central Brazil, in the Cerrado. I will tell more about the biomes in Brazil, and it's occur in mountain tops. And usually these plants, they occur like in sand soils or between rock outcrops. They are pretty interesting group. Valosia, the group that I'm studying now, has around 120 species. Well, then after my supervisor passed away, I was being supervised by Lucia Loma. Now, many of you might know her. She now is, she moved to another university. She's lecturing, she's associated to the University of California in Berkeley. And during my postdoc, I also went to France to develop my project with Ananaoese, and I was supervised there in France by Thomas Carvalho. that is a specialist in Annonaceae. And during this time, or during my master and PhD and postdoc, I had like the support of the São Paulo Research Foundation. Yeah, they were paying my fellowship and my scholarship. Yeah, now the subject of this talk. Yeah, in Brazil, we have two hotspots of biodiversity. One is in the Atlantic forest, the forest covering the coast of Brazil, and the other one is the Cerrado, that is a savanna environment in the central Brazil. And a hotspot of biodiversity, just to remind you, is a place, an area with high number of endemic species and with exceptional loss of habitat. This is basically what occurs with the Atlantic forest, that is the forest near the coast of in the coast of Brazil, where most of the population lives nowadays, and and also the Cerrado, where they deforested most of the vegetation to have how do you call it, like soil plantation and also cattle. Yeah, and in Brazil we have six main biomes, and here is the proportion where they occur in our territory. Most of our territory is covered by the Amazonia, and we also have here the Cerrado and the Atlantic forest in the coast. But I'm going to talk more about that here. Like the Atlantic forest is the forest in this region in the coast, and it's a rainforest. The Cerrado is a savanna environment in central Brazil, and it occupies around 24% of the territory. And it's a savanna, but it also have forests near the rivers. Yeah, it's a very complex biome. And we have Amazonia, the most famous one is also a rainforest. And the Caatinga is in this region, in the northeastern part of the country. And in this region, there is like there isn't too much rain there. And then the vegetation is adapted to have like this, to be in a long period in the dry season. Yeah, then they have like a lot of spines and like very thick leaves and like cachet. And these two other biomes, the Pampa and the Pantanal, they are here in the southern part of the country, and they are like not too big. And Pantanal it's seasonally flooded, and Pampas is mostly a grassland. And the first survey of the Brazilian flora was conducted by and led by this botanist from Bavaria, Carvalho. And the project started in like 1840 and until until 1906, and there were 65 botanists working on this project that took many decades, and they surveyed for the country 22,000 species of plants. Yeah. It's something wrong. Now it's working. Now in 2008, the Ministry of Environment in Brazil, they designated the Rio de Janeiro Botanic Garden, and Rio de Janeiro city, to be the project coordinator of the new list of species from the Brazilian flora. And this was mainly because Brazil signed the Convention on Biological Diversity in 2002. And one of the goals of the global strategy for plant conservation was to produce an online flora for all the known plants. Yeah, and then we have like the online flora, and each country should have your own version of it. And the project started in the Botanic Garden with 17 researchers, and by 2009, they first released the website with a preliminary list of the plants from Brazil. And by this time, there were 400 researchers associated to the project. And in 2010, then published 2 books with the list of these the species. And then these are the results from that time. The total number of plant species is for 40,989 species, like the double of the first survey from the Flora Brasiliensis in the last century. And most of the diversity, of course, is from angiosperms and gymnosperms too, like 31,000 species of angiosperm and 26 of gymnosperm. And here we can see there are like 1,000 species of ferns and lycophytes, 1,500 of bryophytes, fungi 3,600, and algae 3,500 more or less. And here the number of taxonomies is involved in each of these groups. And another thing interesting out of that is that most of the diversity of the Brazilian flora are from endemic species, the species that just are restricted to the country. And Brazil was also the first among the 10 megadiverse countries in the world. And here is a table from this data back then in 2012. As we can see, this is for vascular plants. Brazil has around, by this time, 32,000 species of plants that would be compared to China and to Indonesia. Yeah, and here the size of the country in meters in square kilometers are compared to China, for example. Yeah, and the number of endemic species is also very high, as we can see, like more than half of them. Yeah, and then the project starts a new phase that was the REFLORA. It stands for Historical Rescue and Virtual Herbarium for the Knowledge and Conservation of the Brazilian Flora. And the idea of this project would be produce and make available images of the botanical collections that were mainly in Europe. Yeah, and this project started by 2 herbarium, the herbarium in Paris and the herbarium in Kew. And this makes a lot of sense because they are the largest herbaria in the world. And yeah, here's Harvard, very big too. And then we have here's some data explaining how the collections is displayed in the world. And as we can see, they are mostly in the North Hemisphere. And this is due to the colonial legacy. Yeah, and here we can see the connections between the plants and where they are nowadays, in which collection they are nowadays. Yeah, and what I would say, this some out of this paper, there is an inverse proportion where most of the collections are in the countries where the diversity is low. Yeah? Like there is a lot of diversity in the Southern Hemisphere, but the most collections are in the North Hemisphere. Well, and talking about colonial legacy, we have to understand the historical background, why these collections were in Europe. And first, I have to say that Brazil was previously a colony of Portugal. And everything started, like our knowledge about the flora, when the King of Portugal decided to come to Brazil with all his court, because they were having, by that time, they were having like a war between France and England, and the Portugal king didn't want to have a disagreement with the French, and they decided to go to Brazil. And here is the King of Portugal. And then by 1808 was when his court arrived in Brazil. They also opened the borders of Brazil to foreign scientists to come to study our diversity, not just the flora, our diversity. And one of these are the three main expeditions during the 19th century. And the expedition of von Martius, the one that I talk about, it's interesting because he came together with the fiancé of the son of the King of Portugal. And she liked science. She was a very educated lady. She was from Bavaria, I think. Yeah, I think she was from Bavaria. And she brought with her scientists. Not just Martius was the botanist, but there were also zoologists and other people to draw, like painters and so on. It's the same with the French committee, that the botanist was Auguste Saint-Hilaire, but there were also other painters and other people involved in all these expeditions. And also there is the expedition of the Russians that was led by Langsdorff. Yeah, he was the leader of the expedition, of a naturalist. Well, and during this time, they collect a lot. Yeah, for example, the expedition of Martius, they collect around 20,000 specimens. And the expedition of Langsdorff, we don't know exactly how many specimens they collect, because these collections were lost for 100 years. And just recently, they figure out where these collections are. But for example, the collections of Saint-Hilaire, they are also very big, with around 24,000 specimens. Yeah, and here they collect like 6. We have information for the Martius expedition. They collect around 6,500 species. Yeah, and they took a long trip to Brazil. I will show you a map showing where they went. And another thing interesting about this expedition, yeah, the collection of Martius is in Munich, and the collection of Saint-Hilaire is in Paris, in their burial in Paris, yeah, mainly. Here, the routes that they got, the expedition of Martius, they took like from the coast to the Amazon, mainly by the rivers. And the expedition of Langsdorff, they also went through the rivers, but in a complementary direction, and they took these river systems until they get to the Amazon. And it's very interesting to read about all these stories, because most of these expeditions, they have books where they trace where they were and what's happened. For example, Langsdorff, he got sick in Amazonia, and after that he passed away like few years after that. Well, and why is this important? For example, I brought here a case from my own research, just to show you that these collections are very important for us and for the knowledge of our flora in Brazil. For example, in 2020, it was like one of the last manuscripts that my supervisor was working on before he passed away. We were working with this genome genus Boccagia from the plant family Annonaceae. Annonaceae is the source of family, the Guanabana family. It's a pantropical group that from mainly with trees and lianas that occur in rainforests, mainly in lowland. Yeah, and they have like 4 species. And in this work, we describe two of them. These 2 here. And we were interested in this species, Boccagia viridis, that was described by Auguste Saint-Hilaire. And the other species were described by Marcius during these same expeditions that I just told you about. Yeah. And here is the material that I was in Paris, like the beginning of this year, no, last year, by the end of last year. And I took a picture of the type. This is the lectotype of collected by Saint-Hilaire. And we just know these species by the lectotype, and these other 2 specimens collected more recently. But more recently, it means 1930 in 1997. Yeah, this is the only this species is known by only 3 collections. Yeah, and we were interested in knowing where exactly Saint-Hilaire collected this material, because we wanted to know more about this specimen. You see, they are not very beautiful. Then we had to check where it was collected. Then with the Saint-Hilaire handwriting here, it is written in French, Bois Vierge, Ubá, province, Rio de Janeiro. That means this, virgin woods in Ubá. Yeah, and I was with with Renato, my supervisor, when we were like in Rio de Janeiro, driving, trying to find this precise location of this plant. And he was seeing the book about this trip. Yeah, as I told you, they wrote by that time where they were and what they have seen and things like that. And we could find the location where it was. We first thought that this plant was collected in a city called Ubá, that is in the Minas Gerais state, because during this trip they were in Rio de Janeiro and in Minas Gerais, that are close to each other. Yeah, and then we thought it was collected in this city, Ubá, but in fact it was collected in a farm in Rio de Janeiro that is also called Ubá, and we figured out it completely by chance. He was driving, trying to find the place, and we just saw a plate, farm Ubá. And then Saint-Hilaire was not in a city called Ubá, but in a farm with this name. Yeah, and here is what's the piece of forest from these virgin woods in Ubá. Very small, as you can see. And we went to the forest, tried to locate these species, and of course we couldn't find, because now it's very small. Nowadays, this is a pottery farm. Yeah. And they have like just small fragments of forests. Well, and then this material is important because I only could go to Paris now, but we are working on these species for a couple of years. Then to have the image of the plant is very important for the research, for us to see the types and to see this kind of information and try to find the precise location and to understand how the species look like. Well, and then the project of coming back to the REFLORA project was just the historical background and just why it's so important. The project is divided in 2 main sub-projects. The Virtual Herbarium, to gather all these images from different herbarias, not just from the 2 herbarium in Paris and in Kew, but also other herbarias around the world and in Brazil too. And also the project called Flora do Brasil, that is literally Brazilian Flora. Yeah. And here is the website where they have, and then you can go to see the images or to see the list of species from the Brazilian flora. And here is a little bit about what is in this system. There is 15 herbaria outside Brazil, more than 72 herbaria, 72 Brazilian herbaria. We have like 3.9 million images online. Sometimes it's dots, sometimes I put a comma. Yeah, I get confused. And like a lot of nomenclatural types, and also records with the coordinates, the geographic coordinates. And here are station, like where they have like the photograph cameras to take the images of the plants. Well, here the system, just to see, it's possible to also to change the language to English. If somebody is interested in like seeing a collection from Brazil, want to see the image and if it's in the system, yeah, can access this. And for example, I was trying to locate this species, that is Tilapia aromatica from the Annonaceae plant family. And here we have the list and the image, and you can check the image and the details about the specimen. And here it's like what we have from the number of species occurring in Brazil. The project is now called Flora e Funga do Brasil. It's not more Brazilian Flora, but also wants to make sure that it's flora and the fungi too. Yeah. And for example, now there are 908 taxonomists, not just Brazilians, but also foreign taxonomists. The total number of species is nowadays 50,000 species, includes native, naturalized, and cultivated species. Fungi is 6,000, around 500. Algae around 5,000 species. Bryophytes 1,600, and ferns and lycophytes 1,400. 116 species of gymnosperm, and angiosperm is 35. Around 35,000 species. Yeah. And here is the system too. It's also here it's already in English. You can to know if how many species there are in Brazil, for example. And this was what I mostly contribute to this project, was with the Annonaceae plant family, and also with Austromeriaceae, that is a monocotyledon. I helped to I included the species in the system, and we also prepare a description, a small description for it. And for the genus, we have a key for the genus, and also a key inside each genus, a key for the species. Not all the plant families are finished. Annonaceae is finished. Yeah. But there are, for example, Velociaceae is not finished. And what I mean by finished is that we don't have a description for all the species, and we don't have a key. Yeah. And for example, making a key for Velosa is part of my project now at Harvard Herbarium. Yeah, and here we can see like more in detail what the project achieved during 2015 and 2020 when the system was closed. And now it's a new phase of the project that will finish now in 2030. Yeah. And during these 5 years, I will present some of the results. For example, we have like 36 Americans working in the Brazilian Flora. Most of the people are from working the projects are from Brazil, like 800. We have only one here. I think it's in Japan, probably. And 40 people in Europe. And for example, here I'm going to just talk about the angiosperm because it's the group that I'm working with and also the biggest one. And it's interesting to observe that the evolution of the data from 2015 to 2020, for example, for the Atlantic forest, that is the forest in the coast of Brazil, we have a decrease of 96 species from 2015 and 2020. And why this might happen? Because more studies may be possible also that people will figure out that there are synonyms. And now instead of 15,000 species, we have 14,905. But the opposite occurred with these small biomes in the south of Brazil that were less studied. For example, for the Pampa, that is mainly grassland in the south of Brazil that occur also in Uruguay and Argentina. They figure out that now that there are 893 species more than previously known by 2015. And the same occurred for the Pantanal, the flooded, the periodically flooded biome also in the south of Brazil. The number of species increased in almost 200. Yeah, and this is really impressive because each year from 2015 to 2020, more or less 200 species were newly described. Yeah, for example, in 2015, 300 species were newly described, and in 2020, 194 species was newly described. This is really interesting. This is to show that when you have like an effort like that, we can describe new species and also know more about biomes, for example, like the Pampa and the Pantanal that were not very well studied. And here are the top 10 families. For example, yeah, the very big families we will find here, like Fabaceae, Orchidaceae, Asteraceae, and most of these species are also endemic. But as I showed before, for example, Fabaceae has 3,000 species, and half of them are endemic. The same pattern is observed, for example, in Orchidaceae and in Asteraceae too. Then we have like Fabaceae, Orchidaceae, Asteraceae, Rubiaceae, that is the coffee family, Melastomaceae, Bromeliaceae, Poaceae, Myrtaceae, Euphorbiaceae, and Malvaceae. Yeah, the chocolate, yeah, maybe I should say some important plants, like Malvaceae is the chocolate plants, the cocoa plants, Euphorbiaceae is the cassava plants, Myrtaceae, like, yeah, eucalyptus, Poaceae, Poaceae everybody knows, like corn, rice, Bromeliaceae, yeah, Bromeliaceae is bromelias, Melastomaceae, yeah, Melastomaceae, they have like a very beautiful flowers and leaves that they are like these, like very easy to recognize. And then we have And there we have Rubiaceae, that is the coffee family, and Orchidaceae, of course, and Fabaceae, like peanuts and beans, and have all these plants. Yeah, and here it's like an old figure, but it's nice to see like representing the number of species in the biomes. For example, the Amazonia, that cover half of the country, has 13,000 species. And the Atlantic forest, that is just this part here in the coast of Brazil, has 19,000 species. Interesting data, yeah. The same for the Cerrado. It has like, it's like from the beginning of my presentation, I told you that the Cerrado covers like 24% of the territory, like it's half of Amazonia, but it has almost the same number of species in Amazonia. Why this happens? Yeah. Then here we can see, and I explain in a few minutes. Here we can see the more updated data for this, and the data is more or less the same. Like a lot of species in the Atlantic forest, like 21,000 species and 14,000 species in Amazonia. And in the Cerrado, the same thing, almost the same number of species compared to Amazonia. And why this happens? Because as I said before, the Atlantic forest is in the coast of Brazil, where most of the people are living, where most of the big cities are located. And there are a lot of people, universities and research institutes, and it's really besides in spite of the forest have been removed from most of its original size, it's very easy to arrive there. You can go by roads, by the main roads. You can arrive in a forest reminiscent. But for the Amazon, it's very difficult to reach there. You have to go by boat, and you have to fly from these main cities in the coast to Manaus, for example, to Belém, and then from there to have to go by boats by the rivers and to collect plants. It's really difficult. This is why you have like less species in Amazonia compared to the Atlantic forest, in spite of the Amazonia being a huge rainforest compared to the Atlantic forest. And here, just to show you a very interesting expedition, they went to this region here, that is Serra do Imeri, in the Amazonas state in Brazil, that's close with the border with Venezuela. And these people here in the image were the first people to go to this mountain. And here is Lucia, my supervisor, and here is Rafaela Forza. That was the two botanists in this expedition. Rafaela was the one responsible for coordinating the Brazilian Flora project. And I saw a speech about this expedition. It was really hard to land in these mountains, and they have to have the support of the army, the Brazilian army, to go there, and they were not allowed to land because the floor was not very how do you say that? Was not very firm to support a very big airplane. Big airplane, no, like a helicopter. Yeah. And this is why it's we don't know exactly how many species of plants there is in Amazonia, because it's really hard to go there. And there are places that nobody ever went there. Even the indigenous people, they wouldn't go so far in the mountains. Yeah, then it's like an unexplored world. And here it's like just ending the presentation. We have in Brazil 50,000 species of plants, and in the virtual herbarium we have 3.9 million images available for everybody to study and to do other kinds of research, not just taxonomy, but also trying to understand biogeographic patterns and other things. Yeah, and thank you.
Time for questions.
Thanks, Jenifer. That was really interesting. I don't know very much about the REFLORA project. So you're suggesting that the Amazon flora is going to continue to increase through time.
Yeah.
Do you have a sense right now? Could you give us a sense of how many collections have been processed in each one of those biomes thus far?
No, I have no idea. But for example, from the maps that I've seen so far, it's very, very interesting that they have like a lot of collections close to Manaus and to Belém, and like in the middle of Amazon, there are like almost empty dots in the maps. Yeah, there are the places difficult to reach. You know, because you are in Amazon in Ecuador, it's more or less the same thing in Brazil. It's very hard to get there.
So there is a kind of species diversity increase as you go west in the Amazon. People say that therefore Peru and Colombia are more rich in terms of species. Do you think that's true, or is it just that the collections have been poorer deep in the Amazon?
I think it might be true, because also in the West there is a lot of rainfall there. Yeah, and I also think it's related to the biogeography of it. I was because of the Andes and the PEPA system, the lake that cover like most of Amazon, and like the Miocene and things like that. I think it's like a historical process and an ecological process too. And maybe it's also related to the collection bias, but I think it's very complex. I'm not sure if somebody has ever studied these to try to make.
Can you see the biodiversity gradient as you go west to Amazonia?
Yeah, I've never been there like very often. Like I think I did field collections to the Amazon like 4 times maybe. Then I don't have actually experience like with a field experience from this, but was as I could see from my own data with Annonaceae is that usually they occur, there is a lot of diversity in the Western Amazon. And this is why I also think this is related to also historical process too. Seeds, yeah, usually like as botanists, we usually don't collect seeds, but if we don't have like a purpose for it, like if you don't want to like grow them in a greenhouse or something like that, usually we collect like branches and we press it and dry to prepare herbarium collections. Or you can also take DNA from leaves, and we preserve the leaves separately from these collections. But for collecting seeds that are not in the herbarium collections, you may have to have another purpose for it. Like just generally, people usually don't collect seeds for all the collections.
Where does the funding come from in Florida, and what sort of got it off the ground of World Flora Online?
Yeah, this is
more international.
No, this is was supported mainly from the Brazilian government, because all the projects was in the Botanic Garden of Rio de Janeiro, that is a public institution. But they, for example, yeah, in other research agencies, they also support like these photographic stations around all the herbarium. And for example, there were many people that went to Europe. I participated of this when I was in Q for some time, like taking photos of the Brazilian material that they had there. And it's also from agencies that supports research. Yeah, mainly it's from the government, the Brazilian government.
Are they planning to explore more of the Amazon? Is there more of an effort to try and get in there somehow, or?
I'm not. I don't think there is like systematic plan to collect more in the Amazon. Yeah, but yeah, I think, for example, they are contracting new people from the main research institution in Amazon, and this may change things a little bit, like having more researchers there. They may produce more collections and things like that. Yeah. But I don't think they have like a specific agenda for collecting more in Amazon. Yeah.
Well, also a question about the Caatinga and the Cerrado. Mm-hmm. Why are they different? Is it rainfall seasonality, or what's the reason, or is it just rainfall?
Yeah, it's the rain seasonality. Like for example, in the Caatinga region, they have also in the same like this same place where the Caatinga is also is the place where they have like restricted rainfall during the year. For example, there are some years that they can this this region can stay like 9 months without rainfall, or like 3 months, and this is why they are like very dry. And also the Cerrado is the same. We call this the Caatinga, the Cerrado, and the Chocó, that is like in Bolivia, like the dry diagonal. That they were, in fact, it's a process that occurred also in Africa during the Miocene, because of the climate change, like the glaciations and things like that. The earth underwent to a process in which the climate changed and became drier and hotter. And then the forest that was overspread in the past become restricted. It's the same pattern in Africa too. Like we have like the desert in Africa, and then we have this dry diagonal, Cerrado, Caatinga, and Chaco, separated like the Atlantic forest and the Amazon. Yeah, it's a historical process that's made the biomes like that nowadays.
Like, have they used the results of this research to inform public policy? Like, for example, in the Pantanal, where they find like 800 new species, like, is that being translated into a conservation effort? Or
yes. This is the official list for species for plant species in Brazil. Then they use this data from the Flora do Brasil, the website, to make policies. What they do is they assess this criteria of EUCN. They also do this it's one of the things that they do for the project, and they can list if they assess the risk of extinction. Yeah, if it's endangered, vulnerable, or critically endangered. They use the people from this project also do these kind of things. Then this is the official list for plants that occur in Brazil, and also the official risk of extinction for like policies for creating new conservation units and things like that. Yeah, it's a very important contribution for conservation policies in Brazil.